This is a production of Cornell University.
Morning, everyone. Just to start off, the Hemp website up there, Cornell Hemp, all of the work we've done from a risk and economics perspective has been posted there and will be posted there. So we're going to just kind of run quickly through some of the recent work, and then we'll be updating that material on the website. So 2 topics today, risk management in the hemp industry, and then also some farm level economics. Funding for the first project was Northeast Extension Risk Management, and that was with Lindsay Paschow, myself, and Heather Darby from Vermont. And then the economics was funded by Farm Viability Institute, and that was myself, Lindsay, Savannah Shalna, and Daniela Vergara. Okay, so really quickly, I'll be talking about 5 different sources of risk in agriculture: production, marketing, legal, human resources, and the financial risks. Possible strategies, what we found for, this was a work group that met several times. So understand and implement best management practices was one of the keys. Timely information regarding legal considerations, price points, further research regarding optimal production systems and practices, and then possible solution for some of the risk was vertically integrate. The cost and returns analysis that we did showed that what we did, we looked at 3 different production systems: a greenhouse, high tunnel, and outdoors. And the revenue above variable costs was -3.84, -3.65, and $1.78 per plant for the greenhouse, high tunnel, and the outdoor horticultural systems. These results are very sensitive to variability in some of the key factors. We've looked at percentage of CBD and also the price. There are a lot of others that, and I'll mention a couple as we move through. Let's move through. So risk, I just want to, so we're all familiar with some of the concepts we used for that first project. Risk is variability in outcomes or events, chance that what you expect to occur will not. In agriculture, you plant a crop in the beginning of the year. You have some idea in terms of what yield may be at the time of harvest, but it's not certain. You don't know what that yield is going to be. So that's an example. Characteristics. When we talk about risks, we recognize the variability, but one of the things that is a characteristic of when we speak of risk is that we have historical data that we can draw from for yields, for example. A farm has generally yields over time that they can look at to establish a mean and a range, et cetera. With something like hemp, unfortunately, we're putting together that some of that historical data. So risk versus uncertainty is something that we have to be thinking of. So the sources of agricultural risk, I mentioned those: production, market, financial, legal, and human resources. Production is just anything to do with growing, harvesting the crop. Market and price, of course, quantity sold at what price. Financial is just traditional profit, other measures of economic performance. The legal aspects are one that are very critical for the hemp industry and tends to differ quite a lot from what our traditional farm business owners have to deal with. And then the human resources aspect. Strategies: avoid, reduce, retain, self-insure, shift. So a lot of people in the hemp industry, they've applied for licenses, et cetera. but they're avoiding the risk. They're just not going to take those enterprises on at this point. Reduce pest management aspects, for example, contracts, which I'll mention here in a bit. Retain, you just go about and go about the business as you think is best and hope for the best. Self-insure, set aside some capital or finances for those cases where you may find that I wasn't able to harvest the amount that I wanted to, and now it's affecting the financial aspects of the business. And then shift, move it to somebody else, have somebody else bear that risk. Crop insurance is an example where an insurance company is accepting your premium and they will cover you in the event of a loss. So this is the risk management project. Again, this material will be on the Hemp website. I'm really not going to spend a lot of time on that, other than we had about 100 individuals participated in one or more of the project activities. We had a web-based survey. We had 2 industry meetings, one in New York and one in Vermont. And then in field days, and we had small group meetings where representatives from the different points in the supply chain met to discuss risks, what were some of the underlying causes, and potential solutions. We'll just quickly, I think I'll just go right to what were some of the solutions that the group came up with. So in terms of marketing, the group talked about vertically integrating. So a farm business owner, for example, when we're talking about the sources of risk in terms of marketing and the underlying reasons, people were mentioning things like, I don't have control over the product beyond, the farm gate. How do you do that? How do you address that risk? And so one thing that we talked about was vertical integration. So process and some of the other activities up the supply chain. This contract aspect, it's very important that you understand best management practices for contracts. And Larry and Mary Ulrich put together a nice piece that's available on the website that tells you what a good contract should look like. And they're very important for ensuring that people understand what's going to be delivered, what quality, what price will be paid, and then any sort of repercussions if the contract isn't executed correctly. So that's an important piece and that's already in place. I don't know if Mary and Larry have plans to revise it, but on the website again is a very good resource for that. This next one is one that will sort of lead into the economics and increasing the capacity to determine price points. So that was a aspect of marketing risk that was mentioned. And what we talked about was that, we want to determine it's important to determine the price points, but we need information. For example, the cost of production. I can look at a price that's out there, but what are my costs of production? How do I evaluate and assess whether that price is favorable or not? So the cost of production work that we've done in the economics at the farm level has been a key way that we're responding to that, but we probably need to look at that up the supply chain as well in terms of what are price points, et cetera, beyond the farm production level. Testing capacity, I think probably that was one of the topics that was talked about most in terms of clarification regarding testing requirements, who has to do it, who's going to bear the cost, how much can a grower, for example, spread those costs over plants or acres. So that was that's a critical source of risk that was talked about, and I think I'm not sure where that goes. Is someone that kind of stops at the farm level? That'll probably be something that the industry is going to have to address. Cooperatives were also mentioned as a way to improve not only the marketing of the output, but also obtaining inputs, et cetera. Okay. And then the legal risk contracts, you can see a lot of the same things become repeated because they're interconnected. The legal, the financial, the marketing, and they all at some point tend to affect each other. I think I'm just gonna, this will be on the, on the website, and I think it was on the handout that was provided for this topic. So the other aspect of the work is a cost of production analysis. You saw back on the previous slide where we talked about sources of risk in terms of marketing, establishing price points. So one of the key things in terms of a grower is, what are my costs of production? How do I evaluate these different price points? So we've spent, the group has spent quite a bit of time looking at cost of production, first for fiber and grain and dual purpose. We did some work a couple of years ago on hemp CBD in an outdoor setting. And then this work was put together to look at different production systems. So I'll just I'd like to acknowledge the help of several growers and processors there that did some Q&A sessions with Daniela and others. So that information was very valuable in addition to what we had from our experts. And then the Cornell AgriTech research trials groups. So those are sort of some acknowledgements. We're looking to estimate the value of production costs and returns for hemp by CBD production system. All right, so here's the first set of results that I'd like to talk about. So what we have are the three production systems: greenhouse, high tunnel, and outdoor or in a horticultural setting. And we're establishing a time frame is critical if you're going to look at an analysis like this, looking at others. There are a number of other states that are putting together information. One of the key things probably you want to start with if you're comparing is look at the differences in any time frame that's looked at. So we're starting with transplants. So we start with the value or the cost of that transplant, and then we follow the activities of the process through to the plants are hanging to dry. So that's the scenario that each of these different systems is examined under. So you see that the variable inputs, fertilizer, well, hemp so $6 per plant. Initial assumptions were 1 pound of biomass per plant at a 6 percentage point per pound of biomass and $1 per point. So those were the original assumptions. So there's the $6 per plant. Fertilizer and lime are very similar, of course, except for the outdoor horticultural, because there's a cover crop going on. And so there's a little fertilizer to establish that cover crop. Seeds and plants, again, we used $1.20. So when we had our group work, $1 for the seed and 20 cents to establish. That was what we agreed upon. The outdoor setting includes some cover crop seed. This is a factor that when you're looking at other analyses, you really have to pay attention to what's being used there. For example, there was some work out of Alabama earlier this year, and I was looking at that and just to see where our estimates were falling into place. And comparing this to our work to the Alabama work, it was the costs were much less, and it's one of the things is they used $4 per plant for the transplant. So the results are going to be very sensitive to those kinds of things. Sprays a biofungicide for the indoor settings, and then other inputs, other crop inputs. We talked a bit about testing this morning. So testing is a big factor there in terms of that category. And just there was a question earlier about what are some of the fees. So we used about $300 for a heavy metal pesticide residue tests. And then there was a testing fee of about $250 to $300 for the traditional THC and other testing. So you can see that, for a given crop or a given year, that's a pretty significant number. And so that's where we talk about who's going to bear that cost, and that sort of thing. So our assumption there was that we took half of the cost and put it into that spray or other crop inputs. So that's where, the indoor settings are going to be at a disadvantage. They're spreading that cost over fewer units, whereas the outdoor setting, we're looking at 1,500 plants per acre. The indoor setting was 120 plants for one growing season. So that's a major difference between the systems at this point. And really, I think someone mentioned earlier, or I saw at some point, sort of the disadvantage of those indoor systems on a fairly small scale. Labor, of course, is a big one. Indoors or in the greenhouse setting, the key there was that's about 31 hours in terms of labor hours, and a lot of that is in pruning. That's where the vast majority is, and then we have probably $5 to $4 for harvest. This is for the structure, miscellaneous daily tasks, and then some cleanup and that sort of thing. So those are the hours for the indoor setting, for the greenhouse, and then the high tunnel is similar in terms of what's going on there in terms of the cost per plant. And we see that the labor for the outdoor horticultural is about half. And there's mechanized planting. The transplant operation is mechanized with a tractor, a planter, and 2 people. So, that's contributing to a lower per unit cost. And then actually then the outdoor setting gets pretty expensive when it comes to the labor that's used in terms of pruning, harvest, and hanging. All right, so those are some of the keys that I wanted to get out there. That those are the results that we have to date. We're working on this project probably through the end of this year to finalize and come up with some firmer estimates. You can see that the returns there, again, that's what I mentioned earlier, returns above variable input cost, negative, almost $4 per plant for the indoor settings, and then $1.80 for the outdoor setting. And again, a lot of this is the ability to spread some of those, like the testing fees and other costs that are fixed, like licensing, et cetera, over greater units. Okay, let me just, there's some sensitivity analysis. I think I just wanted to, that last bullet item there, items, just make sure that you understand the time frame used. The value of these transplants seem to vary, at least what are being used in the analysis vary quite a bit. The product testing expense, and then labor charges.
Thanks, John.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.